This is Kevin, and this is a special edition of Occupation Breakdown. I have a special guest today. It's Father Chris Collins. He is the pastor of St. Peter Claver in St. Paul, Minnesota. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Thanks very much. I appreciate it.
All right. To kind of introduce why I have Chris here today, I'm going to play a little video, and then we will go from there.
Faith leaders were back at the Whipple Federal Building today as part of their push for religious care for ICE detainees. The group says they were previously denied access to meet with people being held there until a federal judge stepped in. Sammy spoke with those faith leaders and explains where things stand now.
On a cold, holy Thursday,
it's a heavy place.
Faith leaders hope to give warmth.
For weakness and transgression, forgive us, Lord.
At the Federal Whipple Building, clergy members prepare to go inside to offer prayer to detainees.
Jesus was in many ways incarcerated by the state, and so in that same kind of a way, we know that detainees are being harmed in different ways.
But they couldn't always visit those held inside Whipple.
So there's been this lawsuit of us saying this is part of the rights of faith leaders and also constitutional rights of those who are detained, that people should be able to have pastoral care.
Documented in the lawsuit against the federal government is Pastor Melissa Gonzalez's story of when she tried to enter Whipple. It reads, despite her religious calling and experience, Reverend Gonzalez was denied access to detainees at Whipple.
It breaks my heart personally.
A judge has since ordered the federal government to allow them to give pastoral care to detainees.
Last week, Reverend Kelly and I were able to visit for the first time with detainees, 5 men in shackles who had been separated from their families and were to be deported. Some of them Minnesota residents, some who'd been living in other parts of the country.
Today, they'll try to find more people.
Hopefully we can offer some warmth.
But as they re-entered into the cold, they brought back unexpected news.
We were told that there is no one being detained at the moment, so we were not allowed to visit anyone who is detained. I would love it if there were not innocent people detained here, and so maybe there's really not somebody here right now, but there are people all across our state, across our country, across this world who are unjustly detained and incarcerated.
She says as long as there is, she'll continue to look for those who need warmth.
We did reach out to the Department of Homeland Security to see when the last time someone was held at Whipple. They did not immediately respond, Ken.
All right. So obviously, Father, you were a part of that video there. You were a part of the, washing of the feet. I think you were doing some talking there as well. Can you just kind of walk us through how you ended up at Whipple this day and why you weren't just spending your Holy Thursday at your parish like any other priest?
Yeah, maybe I could go back a little bit prior to that. So even back in December, it was the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe in the Catholic Church, which is December 12th. There was a lot of news coming about of people being, the surge happening and people being detained. And in this particular case, there was a mother of a Catholic school kid locally who was detained. The teachers kind of got the word out about that. So we did a kind of a quick, spontaneous kind of prayer service outside of Whipple that day. When several, dozens of people came to pray there. That was my first time really being there and being drawn in a bit more. Later on, we had a prayer service at the Minneapolis Federal Courthouse, and had some people gathered there to pray actually for the federal judges, because there were many instances of federal judges doing their job, frankly, and following the law and calling the DHS and others into conformity with the law. And so just thanking them for doing their job, asking God to bless them. So that was another kind of little encounter that I had. And then later on, there were some lawyers from Chicago who were involved in a kind of a parallel case in Chicago of providing religious care, pastoral care to detainees there. So they got connected with some lawyers here. And then some of those folks reached out to some different clergy folks, faith leaders. I was one of them. And so that's when I ended up along with others signing on to that lawsuit for religious liberty, essentially. Both having the religious leaders have access to folks and also have people being detained, whether justly or unjustly. Whether they're detained, however they're detained, they still merit pastoral care and religious care. So that's how I got involved in the lawsuit. And then later, some of those clergy leaders put together this prayer on the morning of Holy Thursday. So I was able to be a part of that, which was really very powerful.
So, what was your experience like outside and inside the facility? I guess particularly that day, or just kind of in general in the times that you've been there. What would you characterize it as?
Well, the very first time we went and just said that I went in December, it was still pretty ambiguous about what was being allowed and could people go in. And in that instance, we were shut out of the building. We were going to do the prayer in the parking lot. Then they said, no, you can't even be in the parking lot. You got to go across the way. So we did a kind of a spontaneous prayer out there. My experience there is that it's cold. The times that I've been there for prayer services, it's super cold, and I was ill prepared in my dress, for one thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it kind of increasingly got kind of tense just in terms of the boundaries and so on and limits and who gets to make what calls. I don't know, but it's still people trying to come together to put their faith into action, into the public square. So I mean, it's edifying the faith and the dedication that a lot of people have. I've been able to meet really good people there at the same time. So
yeah, and also interestingly enough, obviously, I think a lot of those people do get a bad rap, just from media and general people in the area. So I think once you kind of get there, you start to, I was taught, I was born Catholic and, taught with religion through my whole life. And so, you look for God in everything. And it's like, you could see it in these people that are the helpers that are stopping what they're doing to care for people that don't have the ability to, deal with anything at that point. So
yeah, no, for sure. I mean, and these few instances that I was talking about that just I was involved in were just some, discrete prayer services. That's to say nothing, obviously, of the massive outpouring. To me, it's the most impressive thing that has happened is total strangers gathering food, finding out who needs help, gathering money for rent, delivering. I mean, it's mind boggling, the solidarity and the goodness that came out of this really distorted situation. So that, to me, that's like one of the big takeaways, because it can be so discouraging on the one hand when there's a kind of a sense of lawlessness by different aspects of the government, and then the massive wave of love and solidarity and compassion to the stranger, literally living out the gospel of what Jesus said, like, who's your neighbor, and the Good Samaritan story, like in the flesh, like every day, and hundreds of instances around the Twin Cities. It's pretty remarkable to me.
yeah. Yeah, so I guess I got some questions. Basically, I think when I initially reached out to you, I hadn't realized, I heard that you had made it in. I didn't realize that you guys were turned around. Can you kind of talk us through that experience of what it was like walking into the building and the conversations and how I guess respectfully were you treated, or how do you feel like that went down?
Yeah, I had actually been asked by the lawyers earlier. Now I can't remember when that was, earlier on, to see if I could go visit detainees. And I did go into Whipple another time, well before, earlier in Lent, I guess. I guess it was near Ash Wednesday, actually, because it was kind of the beginning of Lent, and to bring ashes for those who wanted it. And at that point, things had already started getting like visibility on the distortions going on were pretty prominent. And I hadn't been there prior to that, but in that instance, when I did go in and go to the check-in line, there was a gal working there, behind the glass, and I asked if I could go back. She was super respectful. In fact, she said, "Hey, I went to a local Catholic school. Could you pray for me?" It was really kind of a touching little moment because she's in a tense spot there.
Mhm.
So she could not have been more gracious. She called back, and what she was told was, at that point. This is more around Ash Wednesday. She was told at that point that religious leaders were not allowed back there. Only legal representation would be. So I got turned away at that point. And then the next time that we went on Holy Thursday, when we went in, again, there was the same gal at the desk there, and I remembered her, and we chatted and prayed for her right there on the spot. And then at that point, she called back and said they called back and said there are no detainees there now, so there's nothing for you to do here. Now, in that instance, we also met there were three of us that went in, three different clergy, and we ended up meeting a couple of other families, immigrant families who were trying to do whatever the process was that they were doing to get their status lined up and so on. So we were just chatting with them in the lobby, and then one of the clergy is much better in Spanish than I was, and so she really made a connection with them and found out what their more material needs were in the moment, and so she was able to follow up on getting some other kind of supports for this young mom with a baby and a child, and whose husband had already been deported. I mean, it was pretty. I mean, she just looked so obviously scared and lost, That was just meeting in the lobby there as she was trying to have some kind of appointment. So there was some kind of random interactions that still ended up being pretty, I'd say probably pretty important, maybe.
This is a break from your regularly scheduled programming. After I finished this conversation, I realized I forgot to ask one of the most important questions of the day. Did you believe the DHS employees when they said nobody was in custody at Whipple that day? Because I certainly didn't myself, and I was willing to prove it. So I later talked to Nick Benson. He's the flight tracker from 50501. He reported that a flight left MSP with 31 detainees the next day. Let's watch the footage together, shall we? Yeah. Before I kind of move on from this, I guess with this, no, I do have one other question for you. So have you visited other detention facilities before? Is this something that you normally do, or as a priest?
Yeah, that's been earlier in my life as a Jesuit. I'm a Jesuit priest now within the Catholic Church. That's a religious order. So I've done that at different times before I was ordained to city jails and county jails in St. Louis, federal places. I was out at Stillwater after I moved here about 5 years ago. I used to work on the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota, so I used to do a regular, visits and pray with people and just visit in several different settings. In recent years, I haven't done it. I haven't been able to, frankly, with just time and stuff. But it's been a pretty powerful experience for me as a priest and as a religious, being able to just show up and recognize people and whatever their circumstances are, and to just try to show somebody cares, somehow God is close to them in the midst of this, try to communicate that at least. So that's been really powerful for me, some of those experiences.
And in none of those facilities you've ever been turned away or ever had any issue before?
No, I mean, there's instances where it took forever to get like all the red tape lined up to get clearance to, background checks and processes. Okay. And it all depends, and those are totally different kind of settings. Like a reservation is one thing. It's got its own kind of rules and regulations. A city municipal jail is different from a county jail and a state prison and federal facilities. So they all had some process of get clearance to be able to do it. So
one last question, I guess, about this day and just kind of everything surrounding it. I guess it, obviously you brought that starting at around December 12th, but kind of within this whole time frame of all the things that you've kind of seen and had happened during that time, how has your life or kind of viewpoint changed since all this has began?
I guess I kind of touched on it earlier. To me, what was against the backdrop of something so discouraging and immoral and lawless, frankly, the way these actions had been taken in such a chaotic way from aspects of the federal government. But to see that from the ground up, local citizens looking out for their neighbors who they don't even know, I mean, the way people mobilized and organized and the generosity that came to, even materially, financially, and time being spent, and people escorting kids into school and out of school and giving rides. I mean, to me, that's what has most been impressed in my mind and my memory, my heart, I'd say, is that response of love against the backdrop of such, kind of inhumanity in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I would say so. I wasn't particularly active, I could say, within the community, until really, I think when Renee Good happened, it was like, this is, it was definitely a changing, moment there. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think, I think I was going through a bit of my own, call it psychosis or crazy moment there, feeling like why does nobody care about this? And it wasn't until I started going to like, Whipple, or start engaging with the community and seeing all the things that you just described, that restored my faith in the community. It restored my faith in humanity within, the state, the whatever, my town, all those things. So
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. So I mean, that was a transformative moment for me as well.
Yeah. Another thing you mentioned, this was pretty poignant for me too. Actually, for a lot of January, I was out of the country.
Hmm.
I was in Rome with a group of faculty visiting the Vatican.
Yep.
We do that every year. And the first night we got to Rome, we were out for this fun dinner, and then we got the news of Renee Good then, and we're all from here. And obviously just really strange to be in another country when that
Hmm.
was happening. The very next morning, our first visit was at the Vatican, like at an office it's called the Dicastery of Culture and Education. And the bishop, who's kind of the number 2 guy for the whole church from the world, I told him, before we get into our meeting, this thing just happened last night in Minneapolis. This woman was killed. He says, I know, he was well aware. And so we started our meeting with this Vatican official, with these faculty from Minnesota, praying for her, for her family, for the whole community. Just that was like the global solidarity or sensibility was also, that was pretty
Yeah.
pretty poignant too, So
Almost like you
and
didn't realize it, and they're like, no, we know.
no, right. And we just thought, and automatically to be able to just, that's what we can do, is pray on the other side of the world. And just that also has been, no doubt, versions of this happening. I mean, in different ways, I think faith maybe being awakened and concretized in the needs of the world is, to me, very impressive too.
Yeah, so this kind of leads me into my next question. And as obviously, when people think of religions broadly, and you can't paint Christians or Muslims or anybody in a broad brush, Jews, whatever. There's differences and different sects and areas and whatever within those. So even within Catholicism, that also plays out as well. So, the reason why I chose you in particular today, I've been kind of interested in the interfaith actions and everything. I grew up, Catholic. I was in Catholic school from kindergarten through high school, youngest of 5. We were like one away from getting a church van. We're pray the rosary as a family. I was
Yeah.
altar boy through grade school and everything as well. So, the full experience. I would say I'm not practicing anymore, but my thought behind that was basically, as I looked around the community, I didn't see the people in my community reflecting the beliefs of Jesus and the things that I was actually taught. So not to say that I'm like, poo-poo religion. I'm not necessarily atheist or anything like that. I was like, look, I could continue to live those beliefs, and Me showing up at church, I don't think is the ticket. It's me living these things and actually doing that. So, I was kind of like, well, if I do the right thing and live my life the right way and charitably in those ways, then, I think that's my best chance at salvation if there is one. And if not, what's the worst that happened? I just was a decent person. So, but yeah, so my question here to you is, I don't see a large contingent of Catholics kind of involved in this fight. It's just like a few small pockets here and there. So I guess my question is, why are you getting involved in politics? Because when you talk about, someone like LeBron or something, why don't you just shut up and pray basically and stay in your lane?
Well, first on the thing about, doesn't seem like many Catholics have been involved. I actually don't think that's true at all. There's all kinds of people.
From my perspective, I'll just say.
Yeah. No, yeah. I just want to kind of give a little pushback there too, because actual people of all sorts of different faiths or no faith at all were absolutely motivated and serving and reaching out all kinds of ways. I mean, I know just anecdotally, we don't have one big media story for it or whatever, but I think so on the ground, actual people for sure have been of all different backgrounds, and I think that's part of it too, is the community aspect of it. When you're in a community doing things, and there is a case for religion generally, like there's bonds of relationship, that I'm not just doing stuff individually, but when I'm in a community, I get inspired by other people. I get challenged by other people. I get reminded there's more going on in the world than I was aware of. And so anyway, so I think that's also, I've experienced that more palpably, I guess, in some ways recently because of all this. And in terms of getting involved in politics? Yeah, I'd say, I mean, I guess the way I would approach it is, it's not about politics per se. It's about reality, like confronting reality. Like and there's a million injustices that are going on all the time that I don't know about, or I'm not paying attention to, or I don't have the capacity in my mind to, but once in a while, something hits you, like a reality hits you. Like in my case, like going back to December, my friend, her daughter worked in a Catholic school. This one kid had his mother taken, and that got me, I mean, and then there's a little bit of a, so I mean, I wasn't looking to be an activist or something, it's like here's an actual person, and that's heartbreaking. And so what can we do, and I think the people of faith, the church as a whole, the core of it is the dignity of every human person. And that's core to our belief. We even believe God became a person and was vulnerable and was a migrant himself and so on. So the sanctity of every person is at the center of everything. If there are people, actual concrete human beings, people who are suffering, then we act. We have to, like, that's just what we do, and I would hope that others would if I was hurting or suffering. And so it's really about keeping humanity at the center. And so, there are other things to do as a result of that. You can advocate for different policies or electing different officials or participating in lawsuits. And those are all other aspects of it that are important for civil society. But it also kind of starts with the concrete, hearts being moved. I think that's where it all starts. Like Jesus in the gospel says, multiple times there's instances where he sees big crowds and then his heart is moved for them, like sheep without a shepherd, or, they're moved to feed them or moved to encourage or show them the dignity that they have. And so all this stuff is, motivated by, a basic humanity, but it's, I would say for me at least, kind of intensified because of the gospel and then the teachings of the church too, which are all, I think, pretty consistent. Just basic humanity and having compassion. We become more human when we allow our hearts to be touched like this, and then respond not just as an individual, but as somehow or another a community. I think that's also super powerful to know that. That's the other thing. There are certain things I can do that other people can't do. Other people can do things I can't do. They have access to different parts of culture and like what you're doing here. I wouldn't know how to do this. And the creativity of
Mhm.
bringing people in to have conversations.
Yeah.
So that's cool too. Everybody has a different thing that they can contribute, and not no one person can do it all. You're not meant to either. So you're meant to rely on community that way too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. And I think there's a lot of people that see a lot of these events as just one-off things in all these different areas. I guess what my mission is here is to try to grab all those and tie them together so people
Mhm.
could start to see all the connections and how all these things are actually all tied together and working
Right.
in tandem and not just separate issues. So I love I'm going to use that now, confronting reality, I think, is the best way to say it. And are we going to act like it's not happening, or are we going to just open our eyes and see what's right in front of us?
Yeah. And also, what can I do constructively too? Because I think that's part of sometimes when we confront reality, like we just get, and especially these days, like we just get outraged,
Hmm.
and complain about what other people ought to be doing, or
Hmm.
what the government ought to be doing, and
Yeah.
so on. And there's definitely room for that too.
Yeah.
But I'm always I think it's always, I try to focus on the particular and the local and wherever my little corner of the universe is. What is it that I can do constructively that actually will give me and others maybe some encouragement too, and not to get paralyzed by the injustices or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Or to be consumed by, I've had times at different instances of more being consumed by frustration or
Mhm.
of all different kind of settings. But well, like, what good is that? What can I actually do, or what can we do as a little group of people, or whatever? And then there's always something to do, and to create something
Yeah.
constructive and positive and life giving too, that maybe provides some hope for next steps too.
Yeah, and to be fair, I created this out of, I think,
Yeah,
channeling rage into something
yeah,
constructive, because I was
yeah,
like,
exactly.
I could be angry and
Yeah,
whatever till the end of the day, or till
yeah.
the end of times.
For No, for sure. And what good does that do anybody? Like you're doing
Yeah.
something constructive with it, which is awesome.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so you had mentioned, obviously, this kind of works into something that I saw come up today. So you had mentioned that you were in the Vatican. Have you met Pope Leo before then personally, or
No,
okay?
no, I never met any popes. I've seen him from a distance and waved, but
Yeah, almost.
gave a thumbs up.
Okay. Well, no, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Obviously, and I think this is another just kind of confronting reality moment. Obviously, I have deep respect for what you're doing as a, member of the Catholic Church who is doing what I believe is you're living in the, word and footsteps of Jesus, and trying to follow those things and bring that to the community. So I definitely appreciate that. In the country, I know it's a tough time, and just internationally, nationally, and all that, to just be a Catholic right now. And I'm trying to think of all the different things, but basically, what was I gonna say? So I mean, obviously, like the Holy Land. Is it even accessible right now? I think about, like, when I was a child, basically, we used to, every Christmas, in the back of the church after masses, they would have the people from, the actual Bethlehem that would have their handcrafted,
Yeah,
little wood things that we would buy, the little religious
yeah.
stuff. Does that even happen anymore? Are those people still able to operate?
Good question. I would imagine they are. I've actually been to that store in Bethlehem, and I
Yeah.
know that's like it's like a co-op of
Yeah.
different people who's selling the crafts and so on. Exactly right now, I don't know what the status is. There's another Jesuit friend of mine who lives there, and so he'd be able to answer that more. Obviously tourism is way down, if anything. Maybe they're still able to ship things out. I'm not sure exactly
Yeah.
what the status is,
That
but
wasn't my point, but
yeah.
so I was just thinking about that because I remembered that as a child, and you start to put things these things together, and then it was like, they like canceled Christmas in in Bethlehem. I think it was like, I don't know if it was
Yeah.
this year or the
Right.
year before or something,
Yeah.
So as all these holidays happen, I start to think about what it's like and things there, as well as, what's going on. I just want to play one video that I just saw today, and I just want to get your comment on it, and we'll just call it confronting reality, I guess.
The Pentagon has threatened the Vatican with violence. So hold on to your rosaries while I tell you about this. As you well know, Pope Leo has spoken out against Trump's war in Iran, and especially about Trump saying that he was going to end a civilization. In response to that, high-ranking officials at the Pentagon summons the ambassador from the Vatican to the United States. His name is Cardinal Christophe Pierre. He is French. That will become important in a second. In this meeting, it's reported that Elbridge Colby, who was the Undersecretary for Policy at the Department of Defense, told the Catholic Church the U.S. military can do whatever it wants, wherever it wants, and the Catholic Church better pick a side. Okay. And then another high-ranking official who has not been named yet brought up the Avignon papacy. This refers to a time in the 14th century when the French monarch sent this dude to kill Pope Boniface. The French monarch took out a hit on Pope Boniface because the Pope had crowned Louis IV of Germany as the new Holy Roman Emperor, and the King of France wanted it. So that dude got a bunch of what they called adventurers to kidnap the Pope, torture him, imprison him, and eventually he died. Directly following the death of Boniface, the French required that the Pope live in Avignon, which is a region in France, for a period of time. I think it was like 8 popes worth. Okay, so to Catholics, invoking the Avignon papacy is a threat to the Pope. It's a threat from a nation saying, hey, remember what happened in the 14th century when we sent someone to kill the existing Pope and then we forced the new Pope to come live in our country under our rules and do our bidding? Remember that time? Why would you say that? Why would you say that unless you were like threatening them? The Vatican was apparently so alarmed by this conversation that they have pulled Pope Leo off attending any America 250 events, and he is not planning to come to the United States at all anytime soon. Now, the Pentagon is saying it wasn't that bad. The Catholics are being babies. But you wouldn't say those things. You wouldn't say, first, the American military can do whatever it wants, wherever it wants in the world, and the Catholic Church better choose a side, and then bring up this period in time when the French monarch killed the Pope and then forced the new Pope to come live in his country under his rules. You guys!
So, politics or whatever aside, obviously, we said confronting reality. I just happened to see that today, and sorry for throwing that on you. but do you got any thoughts about this situation? And my focus, I guess, is not necessarily about the particulars of the situation, and you could comment on them if you want, but on why people need to be engaged in confronting the reality right now, as Catholics or just as people in general.
Yeah. Well, I didn't expect to get like the church history reminder there from the 14th century. So that's fun. That's still alive.
I saw it literally 20 minutes before he started. I was like, I got to grab this.
Okay. Yeah, right. And I had not heard anything of, and those are maybe speculative. Who knows what was actually communicated to the nuncio. It's actually a new nuncio now too. But I mean, generally, certainly the life of the church for 2,000 years has been all kinds of instances of, for all kinds of different reasons, the church standing up for this or that teaching or population or principle, and being, it's been a lot of navigating of the freedom of the church, and in different times, whether it's absolute monarchs or totalitarian regimes or aspects of democratic republics too, trying to tamp the church down too. So that's been always happening, different versions of that, and sometimes more acute than others. That's one of the more acute times in church history with the papacy too. So that's kind of always been the case. I mean, the great movie that's a great inspiration for me, The Mission. It's kind of like did you ever see The Mission when you're in Catholic schools? Remember that? Robert De Niro and what's his name? It's a great movie from the late 80s in South America. It's set in the 17th century, but the Jesuit missionaries there trying to protect, in that case, the slave trade, the indigenous people from slave trade, from the Spanish crown and so on. So that's a tremendous movie. That's about religious freedom against the state and so on. It's kind of like the Top Gun of religious life, actually, inspiring people to become religious. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what else I would say other than there are always instances of the big argument of whether the church or particular people of faith even can even articulate what they believe in the public square. Sometimes people don't want that at all, and then sometimes people of faith want to impose their beliefs on the public square too. Well, that's also not
Correct.
legit. But you always got to engage. I think you got to be in the mix. We're free to speak. Everybody, including people of faith, and so gets convoluted. But at the very least, we have freedom to engage. And if I want to come from a religious or a moral perspective, then, and if people don't want to listen to it, okay, but at least everybody can still make their contributions at least.
So
and also get organized in part too. Get organized to demonstrate a big body of believers that need to be listened to.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier that you're a Jesuit priest, and for people that don't know, I guess my assessment of it is that Jesuits are definitely more socially active and in the community in that way. So how do you deal with that, like you just said, that kind of line of flirting with the politics, and because obviously, like you said, in my case, I wouldn't want to be told, we don't want a theocracy, in that sense, and we don't want that thing. So how do you do that while still confronting reality?
I think there's and Jesuits are, I think, unique in this way. I mean, sometimes we have more visibility because we're a big order. We also run a lot of schools around the world and in the country too. So being involved in schools, also high schools and colleges, universities, when you're working in a platform like that, you kind of necessarily get engaged in the issues of the day pretty naturally. So how do you, I don't know if there's any big, I mean, I guess I'm always trying to, my faith comes first. I'm trying to just do an okay life myself, first of all, try to keep up my relationship with God, keep up my relationship with other people. I'm not on the hunt. To look for injustices out in the world, but kind of like I was saying before, sometimes stuff just kind of hits you, and then you got to discern. You got to pray, like, okay, what is there something for me to do here, or listen to other people too, and what are other people doing? And a lot of it, I guess, is about discernment. Like trying to pay attention to the world around me, but also pay attention to my own heart and what's being moved. Or am I feeling prompted in this direction or that direction? Or am I trying to force something that's really not for me to do? So I guess now that you mention it, there's just ongoing, we would call it discernment, of trying to discern, in that sense, discern what the will of God is at any given time, like for me, but that takes into consideration all sorts of things, paying attention to the world as much as I can, my local community as much as I can, listen to other people who have different ideas and different perspectives, and be challenged or be inspired. So I don't know, that's kind of a muddled answer, I guess, but I suppose ultimately it's a matter of everybody's trying to discern what the next thing to do is.
So to kind of wrap up this conversation here, one of the the reasons why I found you in particular was because I had started seeing I was obviously, as someone who grew up religious, I was moved by seeing the interfaith coalition and all the different religious groups that have been active in this. So obviously, I did mention that before. There are people that I, plenty of people that I don't see, but that does injustice to the large amount of groups that are out there, are doing the work and all that stuff. So I do want to give credit to those. But I did happen to see you through that. I think it's important to be involved with interfaith groups and not just kind of work in your silo.
I think that's also part of being a Catholic, frankly, is that you pay attention to the broader faith community, certainly among other Christians, but also other people of other faiths too, where possible. I've tried to be involved in groups like that and kind of come around particular needs in a given community. I think that's part of being a good citizen too, as a religious person, being a citizen in a broader community. That's the kind of thing I can do. Like I can try at least to be a part of some of those networks of other faith communities. I mean, the Catholic Church is big enough. There's plenty to do, like within the Catholic Church, try to get organized. We're not all that organized,
Yeah.
despite what people might think.
Yeah.
It's hard enough to just keep our own institutions going, but occasionally it's also helpful and fruitful, I think, to get out of whether it's my little parish or my little religious community that I'm in, and get out there. And I don't do enough of that. I wish I did more of that, but life is life. But I think it's super helpful to get a sense of how other communities are operating and other leaders are operating, and maybe I start to see my own faith and community differently too. It's just a matter of kind of broadening some perspective and gaining some confidence being a part of a bigger group that I didn't really think I was a part of actually before, in a way,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you can't do that all day, every day, but where possible, it's certainly been fruitful, and I'm grateful for those opportunities to get to know other people that are doing a lot more than I am.
Yeah. Well, certainly. Well, I appreciate you talking with me today. If anybody's looking to find you, I don't know, do you do social media, or is it just more, you're obviously involved with your church?
Yeah, I don't really. I mean, through the church, we do a little bit of social media stuff just for it's
Yeah,
nothing to
I
speak
get
of,
it.
though. Nothing to brag about,
But if
you could
people were
follow St.
to,
Peter Claver.
they would find you. Obviously, you're the pastor of St. Peter Claver in St. Paul as well.
Yeah.
And then for myself, you could find me. I have a political page personally. It's at DissentDad. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And also for this podcast, this is Occupation Breakdown. So that's at Occupation Breakdown on all those platforms as well. If you're looking to support the show, obviously I do this all out of my own budget, my own money. I'm not making anything off of this. So you could support me at DissentDad at Venmo or on Buy Me a Coffee. But thank you so much, Father Chris Collins, for joining us today. And everybody have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks, appreciate it.